The second, another chapter has to do with, it's called These Will Do. The idea that we accept so little of ourselves and each other. Now, the point as it relates to the presidency is that we basically put forth the effort to get him elected, and then we went somewhere and sat down, okay? And that leads us into the chapter, Bread to be Led. From the very beginning of our time in this country, we were put in the position of being stripped away from all status, stripped away from our heritage, our language, our home, our name, our religion, and we were a blank slate waiting to be written upon. And what was written upon us is that we are dependent. We are helpless. We basically embrace the concept of learned helplessness. And so that's where we are right now as it relates to this whole issue. Throughout our history, we were taught that we could not do it by ourselves. Religion played a part in it. Wait on the Lord, okay? Then wait on your organizations. Then wait on your government. Wait on Mr. Lincoln to free us. Wait on FDR to house and clothe and feed us. Now we are in the same position. We're waiting for our first black president to come in and save us. Now, to the question of being asked to be a part of the agenda, the black agenda, that we haven't been asked, we should not be waiting to be asked. We should not be waiting to be asked, because inherent in the idea of waiting to be asked by whom? By this circle, that is inherent in inferiority if you think that you have to be asked in order to come to the party. It is our party, 41 million people, okay? So we should not be waiting to be asked. We should be working on getting rid of the lack of love that we have for each other, getting rid of the lack of respect that we have for each other. We have to start working on ourselves, and I really contend with not always agreement, is that we have got to stop focusing on white people. And because to focus on white people buys into the concept of their superiority. It is not what white people think about us. It's not what white people do to us. It's what we think about ourselves and what we do to ourselves. That is the key, and that's what we have to deal with. We have to work on what they call this internal locus of control. We have to learn how to deal with what's inside of us. See, because it was established back then on that blank slate, and we learned to devalue ourselves. We have got to fix ourselves before we can deal with other people. We have got to make sure that we restore our race-based self-esteem so that we can go out and pull together as a unit to get this issue solved. So, as it relates to the black issue, the black agenda, it should not be the president's agenda. It should be our agenda.
Please welcome the president of the Student Government Association here at Chicago State, Reverend Curling. I asked Reverend, as president of the Student Government Association, to be on this panel and at this table because it's so clear that young people all across this country were excited and enthused and involved in helping to elect Barack Obama as president of these United States. And so it makes sense to have a young person at this table. I wonder, Raven, without coloring the question too much, what your sense is of what young people think a year later. Again, it's an unfair question on some level, but there's evidence that there are certain folk in this country who are now a little disappointed, asking questions, raising issues. We're here today, Hispanics marching, as Reverend Jackson said, in Washington tomorrow. Gays and lesbians pushed him on Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Environmentalists pushed him to the table in Copenhagen. The Jewish lobbyists pushed them back to the table now. As Minister Farrakhan said, 4 months of new negotiations between the Israelis and the Palestinians. Talk to me about what young people you think, your friends in your circle, what are you hearing, what are you feeling about what young people feel now about this president that they helped to elect a year later?
When I start this question, let's say that I definitely think that there is a need for a black agenda. We're not at the position where we can just back out and say, oh, we've arrived. We have not arrived. Arrived to this table? Yes. But have we arrived to the point where we're competing with what it is we're having a problem with? No, not at any chance. But as far as young America, I will say there are some disappointments. But we have to be very realistic about those disappointments. And what we've heard here so far is responsibility. But not only are we not being responsible for the decisions we made when we decided to vote in January 2008, we are not being held accountable for that responsibility. We can't just place a vote and not hold those people who we vote for accountable for what we need. Just because he is black does not allow him to know every detail of our exact disposition in this country. We have to voice those. There are people who are less fortunate than me that I don't know exactly what they're suffering from in lower income housing, but as a person who is very much so beneficial of things that have come my way, I have to be able to volunteer. I have to be able to get involved with my community. I have to be able to educate myself in order to be able to bring my people to a higher level. Let's be very realistic. Everyone here is mature, more mature than I am. 20 years from...
That's in debate. Because I'm at this table, but go ahead.
Let's look at this 20 years from now. If all of you all, God forbid, were not to be here, who would be sitting at this table? Our country has gotten to the point where, no, we don't have slavery in the forms of whips and police gathering us and not allowing us to be in certain places, but we have them in the form of limited financial aid. We have them in the form of limited jobs. We have them in the form of, well, my parents don't come from a certain area, so I can't get into a school that has proper books and educational material to get me to a level where I can succeed. So if we're still needing a debate of this type of level or this type of extent 20 years from now, am I going to be the only person sitting at this table? We as young black Americans and as young minorities, period, have to step up. We are not only living in fear, we are living in laziness. We do not want to step up and say anything. The black race has not come from a history of people who have sat back or just listened or decided to play the race card. Post-racialism does not exist. And to be honest, it may not ever exist, especially at the point where we decide to say, oh, we have someone that looks like us, not necessarily has experienced the things that the whole entire race has experienced, that it's okay to sit back and say, oh, well, we've arrived. We haven't. We have to be able to voice those opinions. When is the last time that you've seen a large body of black people form any type of rally at anywhere near Washington, D.C.? It is definitely at the point where it is a White House. The White House was more black when Martin Luther King was alive, with all the people that were walking that way, than it is now when black people actually have the right to do and say something.